Thank you. My question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care. Minister, in her most recent report, the Auditor General pointed out that the hospice sector in Ontario is providing high-quality care, but then she went on to describe a patchwork approach across the province. During the election campaign, your government committed to fund 20 new hospices. You reaffirmed that commitment in last year's budget. Matthews House Hospice in my riding is one example that does not receive operational funding. Minister, you're about to release a new budget. Well, you've yet to fulfill your commitments in the last budget. People cannot put off dying to wait for your government to do the right thing and provide compassionate, cost-effective care. When are you going to take some pressure off our local hospitals and properly support hospice care?
Minister of Health and Long-Term Care.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I commend the acting leader of the official opposition for. I know he is a very strong supporter of palliative care and the valuable work that our hospices do, and I know he's going to want to join me because we so infrequently do this, Mr. Speaker, is to celebrate and acknowledge and thank the many, many healthcare professionals and other professionals, as well as the communities and individuals that support our hospices and work in palliative care. They do important work across this province every single day, Mr. Speaker, and we have made a commitment to fund the operating costs of 20 new hospices. We're already providing that support to over 30 hospices in the province, and I'm happy to say as well that my parliamentary assistant John Fraser has taken upon himself the extraordinary challenging exercise to develop a palliative care strategy for the entire province, to take upon him as well the responsibility of focusing on the hospices and those additional 20.
Thank you.
Well, Speaker, back to the Minister. Minister, there's 12,000 people in this province dying in hospital each year because there aren't enough hospice beds. The Auditor General points out that hospice care is much cheaper than hospital care. As an example, in the first 6 months of last year, Matthews House in my riding cared for 64 people at a cost of $254,000. All of that money raised by the community. Comparable care in hospital would have cost $608,000. In other words, Minister, as you know, care in a residential hospital is less than half the cost of hospital care. Your party platform promised more end-of-life care, and specifically, as you mentioned, the funding of 20 more hospices. It's been 10 months, Minister. I know your heart's in the right place, but there are people dying unnecessarily where they don't want to die, and that's in hospital. They'd rather be in a hospice or at home. But you do the right thing and live up to your commitments.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's why we've made this commitment, because we do value the work that hospices are done. I mean, I don't think the Speaker will mind me referencing hospice in his riding. Actually, Stedman Community Hospital that I visited before the new year, which is providing extraordinary service, not only within the hospice itself, but within the community through its outreach programs. So we have made this commitment. The member opposite, as a former Minister of Health, will also know that we were the first government, this government, the Liberal government, to actually provide funding to hospices in Ontario. The former Minister of Health will also know that we were the first province, or rather the first government in Ontario to provide an end-of-life strategy in this province. We're going a step further. We're developing a palliative care strategy so that the care provided is uniform across the province. Part of that strategy is to fund an additional 20 hospices, their operating costs, as we've committed to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Your question, the member from London Fanshawe.